SpongeBob SquarePants Mysteries, Ooze in the Ocean. Chapter 12. The Salty Spittoon was the favorite hangout of every sailor and ruffian of Bikini Bottom. It was supposed to be the toughest joint for miles around. If there wasn't a fight going on at the Salty Spittoon, then it was closed. I'd been in there once or twice before, but it wasn't easy to get into. You had to convince Reg, the guy at the front door, that you were tough enough to go inside. Luckily, I knew Reg and he knew me, so getting in wouldn't be a problem. Connections sometimes, that's what this lousy business is all about. Me, I was connected all over town, and when it came to working connections, I was as handy as a master electrician. Once they got back to Bikini Bottom, SpongeBob and Patrick headed straight to the Salty Spittoon, a dilapidated building on the outskirts of town. Patrick was nervous about the joint's reputation. How are we going to get in? He asked. Don't you have to be super tough to go inside the Salty Spittoon? SpongeBob smiled an unworried smile. What's the matter, kid? Don't you think we're plenty tough? I guess, Patrick said, not at all sure of their toughness. I mean, we know we're tough, but will they think so? SpongeBob stopped and put his hand on Patrick's shoulder. Listen, Patrick, I'll let you in on a little secret. The front door of the Salty Spittoon is guarded by a big, strong guy named Reg. So we're going in the back door? No, it just so happens that Reg is a friend of mine, SpongeBob explained. He knows me. He's let me in before. Remember the time you pretended that I beat you in a fight outside the Salty Spittoon? You threw yourself around while I just stood there. Reg was super impressed. He said, you destroyed that guy without even touching him. Patrick squinted up his face, trying to remember. Then he gave up. I have no memory of that incident. Well, it happened, SpongeBob assured him. Believe me, and ever since, Reg has let me go into the Salty Spittoon whenever I wanted to. So you've gone there a lot? No, after the first time I never wanted to, he admitted. But now I do! I've got a strong hunch the Salty Spittoon is the perfect place to get a lead on our Alaskan Bullworm Wrangler. Let's hurry! Quickening their pace, the two detectives soon arrived at the Salty Spittoon. They stopped a few yards from the main entrance. A huge fish in a black t-shirt leaned against the front door with his arms crossed. Patrick had never seen a guy with such big muscles. Wow, he said. Reg looks really, really tough. Good thing you're friends with him. Yeah, except for one thing. What? That's not Reg, SpongeBob gulped. Oh, Patrick said. Who is it? I have no idea, SpongeBob confessed. He took a deep breath, exhaled through his nose, and puffed out his chest. Well, let's see what happens. Maybe Reg left word that I'm a regular. You said you only went in there once, Patrick pointed out. How could you possibly be a regular? Come on, SpongeBob said, leading the way. He started right up to the gigantic bouncer. Hey, he said in his toughest voice. How's it going? What's your name? They call me Burr. Bert? No, Burr. As in, Burr, it's cold outside? No, Burr said. As in, Claw Burr. He held up his massive fist. SpongeBob gulped, then said, Well, thought we might just head inside and see if there's anyone who needs to see what a real tough guy looks like. Burr looked at the two little guys in hats and coats up and down. Forget it, he said. SpongeBob drew himself up to his full height, which still didn't reach the doorman's belt. Now look, Burr, I'll level with you. We don't got time to stand around all day jibber-jawing with the likes of yous. We're private eyes, see? Working on a case, and we got a hot lead that says we need to get inside the Salty Spittoon pronto. So why don't you make like a line dancer and step aside? For a moment, the giant fish just stood there staring at them. SpongeBob stood his ground, staring up at Burr. Patrick trembled, thinking they were about to receive the clobbering of a lifetime. Suddenly, Burr grinned. Private Eyes? I love Private Eyes! Man, there's nothing I like better than a good action-packed mystery! He gushed. I kind of thought maybe you two were dressed like detectives. So cool! He made a welcoming gesture towards the front door. Please, go right in. Thanks, pal, SpongeBob said, tipping his hat back. Appreciate it. Showing his hands into the pockets of his trench coat, he stepped forward, but Patrick was just standing there, stunned by what had just happened. Come on, partner, SpongeBob urged. We got a hot lead to follow, remember? Patrick shook off his amazement and stumbled forward. Yeah. SpongeBob pushed open the door to the salty spittoon and stepped inside. After his eyes had adjusted to the dark, he looked around, surveying the place. It wasn't pretty. All the toughest fish in Bikini Bottom, sailors, construction workers, wrestlers, boxers, sanitation workers, and librarians, had gathered to prove just how tough they were. At one table, two enormous fish were arm wrestling, straining with all their might until sweat poured off their brows. Then, wham! One of the fish slammed the other fish's fist down, smashing the table into bits. All the fish in the area cheered. At another table, fish were competing to see who could karate chop the biggest stack of bricks. A tall fish finished placing another brick on a stack. Another one, a muscle-bound fish growled. A tall fish raised an eyebrow. You sure, Deke? That'd be a new record. Deke nodded slowly. Yeah, I'm sure. Put it on there. A tall fish grabbed another brick from a pile, carefully balanced it on the stack, and stepped back out of the way. Deke stared at the pile of bricks for a moment, then quickly raised his hand over his head and brought it down, screaming, Hi-ya! Smash! Every brick in the stack was split in two, and so was the table! Deke even chopped a deep groove onto the floor! For a moment, everyone around the broken table just stared in stunned silence. Then they broke into cheers and hoisted Deke onto their shoulders. Off in a dark corner, two colossal fish stared at each other across the table as other tough guys looked on. Okay, one of the seated fish challenged. Go ahead, show me what you got. The other fish leaned forward in his chair. Sometimes, he said in a voice so deep the listeners could feel it in their chests. When I see a lost puppy fish, I feel so sad I want to cry. Ooh, the listeners all cooed. Yeah, the first fish said. Well, sometimes when I see a lost puppy fish, I do cry. Ooh, the listeners cooed even louder. The other fish sat back in his chair, his shoulders slumped. He looked down at the floor, then raised his head, staring at his opponent. Just thinking about a lost puppy fish, I could cry right now! A single fat tear formed in his right eye and rolled down his cheek. The onlookers burst into cheers. Yeah, yay! One of them turned to the fish next to him and said, showing emotional vulnerability. Now that's tough. SpongeBob spotted an employee at the back of the room to retreat. Come on, Patrick, he whispered. Let's go talk to that guy. We'll pretend we want to hire a trained Alaskan bullworm. Got it? Got it, Patrick said. The two detectives slipped through the salty spittoon to the back of the joint and got the employee's attention. Yeah? The server asked rudely. What do you want? Answers, SpongeBob said, leaning on the counter, trying to look as cool as possible. Oh yeah? The guy scoffed. To what? You're spelling homework? A couple guys nearby heard this and laughed. How did two little wimps get in here anyway? Burr let us in, Patrick answered, pointing a thumb toward the front door. Figures, the guy said, wiping the counter with a towel. I'll sure be glad when Reg gets back from vacation. Ever since he left, the toughness in here has been way down. Nodding, the two bruisers listening mumbled their agreement. You're right, Nico, one of them said. Last night I was in here and a whole 5 minutes went by without a fight. The three of them shook their heads in disgust. Nico turned his attention back to SpongeBob and Patrick. Tell you what, fellas, he said, smiling a knowing smile. I'll answer one question. Swell, SpongeBob said in his detective voice. That's all we need. Is there anyone here who can... Nico held up his hand. You didn't let me finish, pal. I'll answer one question. If one of you dorks can finish my signature drink, the salty slop soda. The other two guys whooped, loving this challenge. Woo! You're on, SpongeBob said. Okay, Nico said, shrugging. You asked for it. He opened a cabinet, took out a safety coverall and put it on, and he pulled on long rubber gloves and lowered a welder's mask over his face. Bending over, he picked up a large metal spittoon, set it on the counter with a loud thunk, and started filling it with mystery liquids, secret spices, and heaps of fluffy pink sludge that looked as though it had been sucked out of the garbage cans behind the chum bucket. When he finished, the spittoon was bubbling, smoking, and sparkling. He put a cherry on top and shoved it towards SpongeBob and Patrick. There you go, he said. Bottoms up! SpongeBob smelled a horrible stench rising from the awful concoction. Can I have a straw? He asked, stalling for time as he worked up the courage to drink the potion. Straws are against the rules, Nico said, smiling. Blindfold? Nose plugs? SpongeBob asked. Nico folded his arms across his chest and shook his head. With his hands shaking, SpongeBob reached for the spittoon, but Patrick put his hand on his arm, stopping him. Allow me, partner, he said. Before SpongeBob could stop him, Patrick opened his mouth incredibly wide and tossed the bubbling beverage in, spittoon and all. Boom! The drink exploded in his tummy, stretching his stomach in all directions for a second. He gave a tremendous belch. And then he smiled. Okay, SpongeBob, he said. Ask the nice gentleman your question. Nico and the two other guys were amazed. Their eyes bulged with astonishment at what they'd just seen. No one had ever swallowed the salty spittoon, special spittoon and all. We're looking for someone to help us with the little job we're going to pull, SpongeBob explained in his toughest voice. Someone who can wrangle an Alaskan bullworm. Know anyone like that? Nico nodded. Oh, you mean Beth? Beth? Patrick asked. He pointed toward a small table in a shadowy corner. A tough-looking female fish sat at the table drinking from a can. She tipped the can up, finished its contents, crushed it on her forehead, and ate the can in a single gulp. She wore a tailor-made suit, fancy shoes, a fashionable hat, and lots of glittering jewelry. It all looked brand new, as if she had just gone on a major shopping expedition at Bikini Bottom's finest clothing stores. Looks like the Alaskan bull wrangling business pays well, SpongeBob dryly observed to the guy behind the counter. Thanks, buddy. Ignoring him, Nico turned his back on SpongeBob and Patrick, pouring a drink for another customer. The two detectives made their way over to Beth's table. Mind if we sit down? SpongeBob asked. Who's asking? Beth snapped. A couple of potential clients, SpongeBob answered. That is, assuming you're in the Alaskan bullworm business. Who says I am? She asked. SpongeBob jerked a thumb at the guy serving drinks. The soda jerk over there said if we needed someone who knew their way around a big worm, you were the person to see. She took a sip of her drink. That's so. She looked at Patrick. And what do you got to say, fella? Do you want to talk? Patrick tried to look smooth. Oh, sure, sister. When I got something to say, laughing, she said, okay, I like you. Have a seat. Patrick sat down. So did SpongeBob. Nice hat, SpongeBob noted. And jewelry. Thanks, Beth said. Wish I could say the same about what you're wearing. You look like a couple of refugees coming from a rummage sale. SpongeBob ignored the dig. Seems like business is good for you. She shrugged. It's okay. Done any big jobs lately? Like what? Oh, I don't know, SpongeBob drawled, expecting his fingernails. Like maybe having one of your trained worms dig a tunnel? Out in the middle of nowhere? Patrick added. Well, she answered, grabbing the edge of the table with both hands. It's like this. Wham! She flipped over the table, knocking SpongeBob and Patrick off their chairs. And Beth jumped up and ran out the back door. Stay tuned for Chapter 13 coming up soon.